Sometimes it's difficult to find the roller weights that you need. Maybe what you can find is too heavy or too light, or you need a very specific weight. Maybe you don't want to spend a lot of money on multiple sets of rollers or sliders or buy a tuning kit. Whatever the case may be, there are simple options for modifying roller or slider weights to suit your needs. Let's begin with ways to make weights heavier. We need to add material to the weights in some manner, and exactly how we do it depends on how much heavier we want to make the weights. Various types of epoxies or fillers can be used to fill the center of rollers or sliders. When filling weights with epoxy, put down a piece of paper or foil and smear a little grease on it so the filler is less likely to stick. How much weight is added will depend on exactly what material you choose and how much is used. You could fill a weight only halfway for less change, or to the top to maximize weight. Here's a roller that was filled with JB Weld. It weighed 7 grams prior to filling. After filling, it was 8.2 grams. Here's another 7-gram roller that was filled with plastic welder. It weighed 7.7 grams. Make sure that any filler you choose can withstand temperatures of at least a couple hundred degrees. If you need to add a lot of weight, you can fill rollers with solder. This will require you to separate the weight's center from its shell. Find a socket or receptacle large enough for the center of the weight to fall into that will support the shell and set the weight in or on it. Then find a socket, punch, or other object that is the same or slightly lesser diameter than the center of the weight. Carefully align the tool with the center and drive it out as gently as possible. Some weights separate easily, others require more effort. There is a risk of cracking the shell, so don't try this if you aren't willing to take that chance. Next, you should determine how much solder to add. Place both parts of a weight on a scale. Then add solder until you reach the weight that you want. I often use a small fraction more than I need and refine to exact specs later. Now you'll need to find a place to set the roller's center section that can handle very high temperatures. Coat the inside of the weight with a small amount of flux. Heat the weight with a propane torch or other method. Once it's hot, you can start dropping in the solder and melting it. Once all of the solder is melted together in the center, let it cool until the solder is safe to handle. Now you should weigh the center and the shell together to ensure that you have at least as much weight as you were aiming for. If not, go back and add more solder. To lighten the center, drill out a very small bit of solder and reweigh, repeating until you reach the exact desired amount. I reinstalled the center into the shell here, but it may be best to lighten the weight first, so it's easy to correct if you remove too much. When you're ready to reassemble the weight, place the shell on a flat surface. Line up the center with the shell and tap the center back into position. The next method for making weights heavier is probably the quickest and easiest way to add as much as 1 or 2 grams depending on the size of the rollers. Thank you to Clank at the 49ccscoot.com forums for sharing this method, which uses aluminum foil. Cut out a piece of foil and fold it enough that it will fit onto your scale. Weigh the foil along with a roller or slider and add or remove foil until you reach the desired weight. Fold and pack the foil by hand, enough that it will begin to fit inside of the weight. Then use a rubber mallet and a blunt punch or other object to finish stuffing the foil into the center. The foil should conform to the shape of the roller enough that it won't easily come out, and so it's not protruding. Weigh the roller again and add or remove a little foil if necessary. You can even make these in different weights and store them to make tuning faster, since they're not difficult to remove or install. Although not as simple as other methods shown, another way to increase weight is by creating screw-in inserts. This method only works with rollers or sliders that have a thick enough center. Remove the center from the shell. Find a bolt that is slightly larger than the hole in the center of the roller. Secure the weight and tap it to accept the bolt that you've chosen. Cut the bolt so that the threaded portion is the same length as the weight or a little smaller, and clean up the end and the threads if needed. Saw or cut a groove across one side of the bolt so a screwdriver will fit. Now you can screw the bolt into the roller center. You may want to use a thread locker if these will be used for more than a brief test run. Reassemble the shell and center. This roller started out at 7.7 grams and now weighs 10.1 grams. If making a set of these, find the lightest insert and grind or file the others to match its weight. No matter how you modify weights, they all need to be equal for best results. You can stagger weights. One heavier, one lighter, one heavier, one lighter, one heavier, and one lighter. But each set of 3 still need to be equal to each other. To lighten rollers, you may choose to bore their centers to remove material if their walls are thick enough. Separate the shell and center. Gradually bore the center until you reach the desired weight or until the walls near their limit. Then reassemble. If you don't think the walls are thick enough to support boring, you could follow a similar process but drill across the center instead. Just don't get carried away and make the center unstable so it's likely to break apart. The last method I'll mention can be used to decrease or increase weight depending on the roller and material used. Start by separating the shell and center. Find a piece of pipe, tubing, or rod that will fit into the shell without being very loose or tight. For this example, I used a piece of steel tubing to replace an aluminum center. Cut the material to length and file off any sharp edges. Then insert the new center into the shell. Here you can see that with the original center it weighs 4 grams. With the steel center, it weighs 5.5 grams. Using different materials and wall thicknesses should give you plenty of options. Hopefully I've shown that just because you don't have the rollers you need on hand, you don't have to give up on dialing in your CVT. Get creative and find a way. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe for more if you enjoyed this video or found it useful.